Welcome to Season 2 of Next of Kin, the podcast. I'm your host Emma, a British expat who moved to Dubai to further my fashion career when a positive pregnancy test rocked my world. I was asked to choose between my career or my baby, so I realised I needed to pivot fast. And that's where Next of Kin came in. Last season you followed along as I muddled through my first year as a mum and starting my first business. Now I have a toddler, a brand, and this podcast. So join me this season as I jump into my Mumpreneur era and try to figure out whether we can really have it all. I first met Rachel from Motherhood at my very first Right Market when I had just launched the brand. We actually got chatting because Rachel also wanted to start a company, and we recently had this really full circle moment about 6 or 7 months on from that initial chat when we collaborated on our very first event, the Careers Club. We held it back at Right Market at the Sandersons, and 30 lovely mums came to discuss all things careers. We had an amazing expert panel to take questions and give practical advice and inspiration, and it really was just a fabulous morning. Actually, if you're in the Dubai area and want to come to our next one, then make sure you're following on Instagram and signed up to our newsletters. There are 3 reasons why I wanted to get Rachel on the podcast, 3 reasons why I love what Rachel is doing at Mama Hub. The first is her weekly newsletter, rounding up all the local events and classes for the baby and toddler age group. This is literally my Bible for the coming week. That email hits my inbox every Friday and I look through and decide what I'm going to take Bonnie to for the next week. It's so hard, isn't it, when everything's advertised in different places to know what's going on, but this is already collated in your inbox. The second reason I love Mama Hub is Rachel puts on these free play dates, and you don't find much for free, do you, in Dubai? And this is the kind of community thing that I really miss from the UK. I take Bonnie now to most of her Friday morning play dates at Reform, where there are loads of different toy stations laid out for them to have a play, and you can have a nice chat with the other mums in just such a relaxed way. And then number 3, my last reason, well, you're going to have to keep listening to find that out. Rachel, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me. Please, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Rachel. I'm founder of Mama Hub, which is a space to connect mums in the early years with the services and support that they need when they need it.
Well, let's jump straight into Mama Hub and what it's all about. How did you get the idea for Mama Hub?
Well, I moved to Dubai when I was 7 months pregnant with my second, having had my first in Sydney. And Sydney isn't my home, it's my husband's home. So we didn't have a lot of family around, but there was still a lot more of the sort of informal postpartum support. Things like community playgroups and more sort of government funded support. So you don't have a lot of options, but you have probably more access to those options. When I moved here, I was really surprised when I gave birth that there was a lot of things, a lot of that sort of support, but there wasn't a sort of formalized way to access it or to find it. Mm. So that sort of goes for everything. It goes for friends, for lactation consultants, for any sort of postpartum support, anything you need as a new mum. And I think it goes beyond the sort of postpartum period, which I know we now speak about as being much longer than that initial 4th trimester, being much into the toddler years really. But for me it was about trying to find a way to help connect people in my situation with young kids, with maybe more than one young child, with what they need. So at the moment that sort of for us it looks like playgroups, which we run on a twice weekly basis, which again are very much modeled on that UK Australian style, very casual, very informal, drop in, they're free of charge. We just want people to be in a space where they can connect with other mums and have an adult conversation, have a cup of coffee while the kids play, and finding that support network. And then we are about to launch a website that does what our social media and newsletter currently does, which is aggregate the support and services and events that are going on for this very specific age group, that preschool age group around Dubai, so that you can find what you need when you need it.
So what was your background before you started Mama Hub?
I worked for 15 years in the corporate world, in communications, corporate communications and marketing. And it was actually my job that moved us here to Dubai when I was pregnant in 2022. And I gave birth and then went back at 5 months as you do here. And that was, considered a long maternity leave here. And I do feel lucky to have had that. But it wasn't the best return to work. I was working in a global role, and there was just a lot of inflexibility around doing calls. They often fell with the US around the kids' bedtime. So it was a real juggling act, and it was one that, to be honest, just became untenable. I wasn't willing to not put my kids to bed 5 nights a week and give them dinner. So the choice was kind of made for me, really, in that respect. And I'd been there 10 years in that specific company. It just felt like a good time to sort of move on and look at other things and spend a little bit more time with the kids. And I think you can get quite stuck when you're in that cycle of, obviously this was my second baby, and we knew we were going to have two. So when I went back from maternity leave with my first, well, I maybe wasn't enjoying it. You're sort of stuck in that cycle of, well, I want to have another baby, and I think we sort of beat ourselves up a bit about trying to prove our worth when we go back to work after maternity leave. And I found myself doing that. I found myself not saying no to things, unable to say no to things as well, in terms of the structure of the company. So it felt like a good time to move on.
Were there things that you put in place before leaving, or was it quite a snap decision to leave your role?
It was something I'd been thinking about and speaking to my husband about for a really long time. I think, actually not a question of months, a sort of question of years probably. But as I said, you sort of get stuck in that, and I think it took one specific incident of needing to put the kids to bed and being very torn, and that really made the decision in my head. So had I put in place anything? No, not really. But I think mentally I was already there. So I just needed that sort of extra push. And as soon as I had that, and as soon as I was in that space, it was much easier, because I know I'd made that decision in my head months, if not years ago, that it was time to leave.
Well, when we met, that would have been, 7 or 8 months ago at Right Market, and we got chatting and you said you had this idea. Had you left by that point?
I don't think I had, actually. I'd been thinking about Mama Hub for a long time. So I didn't know what form it was going to take. It's gone through so many iterations, and it still is. It's still sort of moving and growing. And I think you have to be quite flexible with that sort of thing as you're building on these ideas. But certainly the idea and the gap in where I think that there is a gap, which is that formalization of the market here, and helping mums connect to things in a much easier way that isn't reliant on social media and the Instagram algorithm, for instance. That for me has always been something I've had in the back of my head. And I think a lot of that is because I've had these two very different experiences of giving birth. One in Australia, where you do have a lot of that support, albeit not, it's not as fancy. It's not as, everything in Dubai is wonderful. There's so much choice in Dubai, but almost too much choice. You can be quite paralyzed by having that much choice. And then here, and obviously moving when we did, not knowing people, not having a network, not having my sort of village around, I could see very much where that gap was. And I think as Dubai moves and Dubai grows in population size and nationalities, and I think there's going to be more demand for this type of aggregation. There's going to be more demand for people needing the support.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because obviously it's lovely to have a bit of luxury when you've had a baby, but what's more important is probably the quality of care and the support that you get, isn't it? So yeah, it's interesting that you make that comparison with Australia.
I think it's also, because everything is, the medical system here is monetized, as we know. It's sort of done on an insurance basis. I think it can be quite difficult to believe or trust what you're being told you need often. And if you're going in to give birth in Dubai, you can absolutely find a package in a hospital that gives you the add-on of a lactation consultant, of a midwife, etc., etc. But you aren't often in a position where you're going to need that when you're making those decisions. And then by the time maybe 6 to 9 months down the line that you might need a little bit of help, how do you find that? How do you go about finding that? Do you go back to your hospital? Maybe, but often it's word of mouth recommendation. It's you speak to a friend of a friend. They tell you that they went through the same thing, and you should go and speak to this person. And that's very much how Dubai works, how a lot of expat communities work. But you need that village first. You need to be having those conversations. You need people to trust. You need friends. You need that village to be able to ask. It's like one big mother's group, isn't it? After you have a baby.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are so many different options, but like you said, you might not even know about the options. You mentioned the algorithm, which is so right. Because even when we put out the notice about the Careers Club event that we did, so many people said, "Oh, I didn't know about this," to me. And so they literally haven't seen every single story and the reels and the posts that we were putting up. So it's very true that you miss out on things.
Yeah, and I think it's really frustrating. I think motherhood is so unique to everyone, and your experiences in motherhood and what you need in motherhood is so different for every single person. So finding what's right for you is the challenge. And it shouldn't be that you should be reliant on what Instagram thinks is right for you, or maybe what you've been searching before and the AI algorithm takes over. You need to be given the choices in one place so that you can make a decision, so that you can go to this mum's group, find out it's not for you because you didn't really click with anyone, that's fine. You go to another mum's group because you know that these events are on and it's all in one place.
Yeah, and that's why finding like the like-minded mums, because if you could ask so many different kinds of people in Dubai for a lactation consultant and they'd say this one is the absolute best, but you've got to find those like-minded mums, and then you trust what they're saying, don't you? So it is all about finding your village and your group to connect with.
Yeah, and that's very much what we're trying to do. We are just trying to connect people with the right thing for them, helping them find what is the right thing for them. And that might take a few different shots, but everything will be in one place. So you can keep going back and you at least then have all the options on the table.
Yeah. I also love that you're doing the play dates for free, because you don't get much for free, do you, in Dubai? And we have some amazing classes, but if I was to send Bonnie to all of these classes that I'd want to send her to, I literally couldn't afford it. Like they're quite expensive. So I just like that it's an option to get out of the house.
To be honest, with the play groups, I'm very conscious to say this to everyone because we do have some unbelievable classes and unbelievable educators. I'm absolutely not an educator. I'm just a mum who brings her 2 kids along to this playgroup who wants something to do, to either get out the heat or just have something a bit different to do and have an adult conversation. But you pay obviously for the expertise of the people who are running those classes, and as we absolutely should. The playgroups, the reason to keep them free for me really was so that people didn't have to choose between doing a class and coming to a playgroup. People can do both. They can come along twice a week if they want, and they're only spending money on a coffee, rather than having to choose, I want to do this class because it's, baby sensory is good for my baby, but I can't do it and I can't afford to do a class every single day. So it was just, again, about giving mums the option and facilitating that space.
It's great for us kind of toddler mums because it gets Bonnie out of the house, it gets her to play with more toys, and she might even get more from it than me because I'm busy running around after her and having broken conversations. But I recommended it to quite a few mums with much younger babies who are maybe struggling to commit to paying for a class anyway because they don't know when nap time is or if they can get out of the house. And this you can drop in, it's no commitment. If you don't make it, it's fine. But also they're probably going to be there with their baby, lay on the mat and having a chat with other mums. So I feel like they will get more out of it for themselves, actually.
Yeah, I hope so. We all know how difficult it can be to get out of the house with young kids. It can just doing that in itself can seem overwhelming. Some days when you've had a rough night or, people aren't putting their shoes on, all that sort of stuff. And especially with newborns and getting in a car and coming along, it's a lot, I think, getting out of the house. And as you say, it can be tricky to commit to things like that because you're kind of going from day to day, aren't you? You're very much in survival mode. You don't know what each day is going to bring. So yeah, I mean, really, we're not doing a huge amount more than just basically saying we're here and we're going to be here every, Tuesday and every Friday. Come along. There's always going to be somebody here who has been through what you're going through or is going through what you're going through. And even if you just have a cup of coffee and stay for 10 minutes because your little one's cracking it, then that's fine. You haven't committed to anything. You haven't paid anything. It's just connection, isn't it, really? I think for me, that's all it is. I always feel better if I'm having a rough day with the kids or I've had a rough night. I always feel better when I speak to somebody who goes, oh, God, me too. That, I had that last week, or, my kids were sick last week, and it just feels like an endless cycle, or you need that sort of validation, and you need to feel like you're not alone. I think in this, it can be a really lonely place, can't it? Early motherhood. It can be, you're never alone, which is the irony, but it can be a very lonely place. So for us, just trying to help those connections is what's important.
Yeah. I like your mention actually earlier as well of that postpartum period not just being the newborn days, which we used to think, mainly because this week I've been trying to cut down on breastfeeding with an aim to giving up breastfeeding. And oh my goodness, the hormones yesterday for me. And we did just stay in the house and it made it so much worse. I was not in a good place by the time Rich got home for work. So it's so true because Bonnie's 19 months and I know it's different because I'm still breastfeeding. A lot of people aren't by this point, but it's so true how those hormones and that postpartum experience is so different for everyone.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I think, that I certainly struggled in that 9-month period where you're still sleep deprived. I mean, certainly my second wasn't sleeping through the night by 9 months. You sort of maybe have found your feet a little bit, but people have stopped checking in on you. It's less new. It's not, all the gifts have gone and you're in this very different stage, but you're still not at that age where you can take them to a soft play, for instance, because they're 9 months old. But it's very difficult to find your feet and also find things for them to do to keep them entertained. It can be quite monotonous being in the house with a baby after 9 months on your own, day in, day out. So I think finding other people who are going through the same thing is really, really important.
On the career side and on the sort of mumpreneur business setup side of everything you're doing right now, I actually like a bit of advice that you've just given at the start without thinking about it, but how you were saying that Motherhood is always evolving and changing. Because I think sometimes we feel as well like we need to stick with our strategy in business. And I felt quite bad recently that I feel like Next of Kin can feel quite messy because I'm always changing my mind and re-strategizing. So that made me feel a bit better. But what difficulties did you find going from corporate life to setting up your own business?
I think, there's the sort of very practical challenges of, when you're in a big corporate, especially when you're doing something like marketing, you have the brand behind you. The brand's been built. You've got that element of trust. You've got a customer base. You already have that. So you're working off something, starting your own thing and building something from scratch. From a brand perspective and building that trust with people, I think I underestimated how difficult that would be to do. And I've learned a lot of things about that along the way. And that's been really interesting. But I think there's a lot of crossover. And when you say, you feel like it might be quite chaotic with Next of Kin, I totally understand where you're coming from. I think for me, the key sort of learning from the corporate world that I've taken across to Motherhood is making sure you have your value proposition locked in, your mission, make sure you know what you're doing this for, why you're doing it, and your values. And I think if you have that and you stick to those, it actually doesn't really matter where your business goes or where the sort of business plan as such goes, because you have your sort of purpose and your mission very much baked in. And if you can stick to your values, again, you're going to be a lot more inclined to get to a point where you're happy. And it just will be a bit squiggly along the way, I think. And that's to be expected, because when you come up with an idea in your head and you can see a gap, there's so many other things that you don't take into consideration until you start speaking to people and until you start doing it. You have to just start doing it. And for me, there was a big gap in time where I'd thought about it for so long, and actually just starting was the hardest bit, and not being afraid to, and it's very cliche and people say it all the time, but really not being afraid to fail a bit, which again, when you're in the corporate world, you're not encouraged to do, because there's a lot of money behind you telling you not to do that, and there could be consequences to that. But I think when you are agile in a small business, you can do that. You can afford to experiment. You can afford to put yourself out there in one direction and learn very quickly that it doesn't work and just pivot. But you have to be prepared to pivot.
How did you get started? What were your first steps?
First steps really was coming up with the name, which was surprisingly difficult. I know the origins behind Next of Kin, and I know you can sympathize, but it's funny, isn't it? You sort of have this idea in your head, and the actual naming of it, and then also needing it to make sure that it's kind of compliant with Google and searchable and all that sort of stuff. And then it was really setting out, as I said, that where I started was very much looking at what I wanted to achieve, what my values were, and what I needed to stick to do that. And then looking at the sort of, for me, it was putting down on paper the initial strategy that I thought was going to work to get to where I wanted to be, which, for us, and it's certainly not the end point, but for us, the website launch is going to be the sort of very pivotal moment for us, and it's what we've been working towards. That'll help bring it all together. So that was really key, to get that strategy down on paper. And it's not, I think people throw the word strategy around a lot, and it can be quite daunting. When I say strategy, it was bullet points. Bullet points on paper. I don't want people to be put off by starting a new business because they feel they need a strategy, and what does strategy mean and how do you start? It literally is just some bullet points on paper and putting a plan in place.
Same for me. I know I've got a new strategy when I walk into Rich and go, Rich, how does this sound? And I just blurt it all out, and he's like, yep, great. So it's really not as fancy as the word strategy makes out.
No. It's just putting it on paper. I think, everyone's different, but I definitely work best when I have things written down and I can see things quite clearly. It helps to crystallize things in my head. And some people do that with sort of mind maps. Other people do it PowerPoints, whatever it is, but just get things down on paper, I think, and out of your head.
Tell me about the website then. What's that going to incorporate? And is it launching soon?
Yeah, the launch date keeps being pushed and pushed and pushed. But yes, it should be launching soon. We are in the very, very final stages of putting finishing touches on it. It will essentially do what our social media and newsletter currently does, but sort of take it to the next level and make it into an online hub. You'll be able to search for classes and activities for this very specific age group, not just for the toddlers and the babies, but also for you as a mum. And for me, the sort of value add of it is that aggregation aspect, because I often find myself, I've got a Friday morning free, for instance, but I can't remember what class is on a Friday. I can't remember what, soft plays open on a Friday, or what deals on or whatever. And I want a calendar where people can just go, okay, Friday morning, what's on? And it will show you whether that's soft play, that'll show you whether it's a class, whether that's a termly class or it's just a drop-in. It'll show you all these things, but it'll show you in a very user-friendly calendar format, and you'll also be able to search for things as well.
Yeah, I used it yesterday because I don't normally have Bonnie on a Wednesday morning. She's normally at nursery, but I did yesterday. And so I went on the email and I had to look what's on Wednesday mornings, and I found something that was going to work perfectly with nap time. Then it didn't, because I didn't have the car, but that's exactly how I use it. It is. So I know, though, that you've also got more plans than that. You want to add in more of the careers aspect for mums. So can you tell me about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The website for me, it's what we're launching with is very much the sort of minimum that we wanted to go with. I've got lots of plans to expand that into areas that I think people need support with. And I think one of those big areas is, as we've discussed lots of times, is careers. Having a baby is such a pivotal moment for many women in their careers. And I think especially here, because of the structure of going back to work, the structure of maternity leave, the structure of childcare here, and flexibility working from home, I think a lot more people are being pushed down that sort of, do I want to start my own thing? Do I want to maybe consult, freelance? How do I do that? How do I find opportunities? So what we're going to try and do with the website is have a section where people can match their skill set and promote their skill set if they are consulting with companies that potentially want to employ people on a sort of more consultancy basis.
I don't know if you've listened to some of my really early podcast episodes, but I did an episode saying basically that a company needed to do exactly what you're doing there. I said we need a place where all the mums who are freelancers can find jobs, because us mums have basically superpowers in terms of our time management, like how dedicated we'll be to that project, getting things done. And I feel like we're such an underutilized part of the workforce, because this is where so many drop out of their careers, or, you know, why are we not harnessing the power of the mums basically in the workforce?
It's that age-old saying, isn't it? If you want something done, ask a mum, because I've never been more productive than I am now in my life. I know what I need to do and I know how to get it done. But especially when it comes to work, that often gets done at 10 o'clock at night. And that's not because it's getting done last thing in the day. It's because that is when I'm most productive, because I've put the kids to bed, I've had my dinner, I've had some time by myself, and that's where I need to work. That's the space that I've allocated for work. But I think it's understanding, and it really, I don't think it's just a Dubai thing. I think it's across the board. As you say, how do you encourage women who do have shifted priorities, as you do when you have young kids who need you so much and they're not in school or nursery potentially? How do you harness what they have? There's so much to give. Women have so much to give in early motherhood, and it's such a mistake to assume that people don't want to give that or that they can't give that, because they do. It just there needs to be an element of flexibility there. And that's where the freelance and consultancy comes in. And but it can be hard to find those jobs. I think it can be hard for companies to find people who want to do that. And again, it's just that connection. It's the matching of skill set and of needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's sort of, people think that you're not as dedicated to your career once you become a mum, or that we lose confidence. And I think you lose confidence in a lot of ways becoming a mum, but actually when it comes to my career, I think I'm more dedicated because I have this renewed reason for doing it. I mean, obviously I had to change what I was doing, but I would have been so much more efficient. I wouldn't have sweated the small stuff or got involved in, I don't know, the office politics, because I don't have brain space. So yeah, it's interesting that there's
I think there's before I had kids, I was working. What were you working for? You were working for money to go on holiday, to go out on a Friday night, to do the things you want to do at the weekends. As you say, when you have kids, it's not that you then suddenly go, okay, all my time needs to be with the kids. It's, I need to provide for them. You have a reason, as you say, to provide now and to work. And it makes you all the more dedicated to do that, I think.
Yeah. And especially with setting up a business, if I didn't have Bonnie, I'm pretty sure all the knocks you get along the way, by now I'd have gone, nah, it's not worth it. I'll get another job. But instead I'm like, nope, failure is not an option, because I'm trying to create a life around it. It's a major part of that, to create this new lifestyle that I would want.
But it's what we do, isn't it, as mums? I think, especially in this across motherhood, failure isn't an option, as you say. Failure is not an option. You have to get up every day, and no matter how you feel, no matter what has happened that day, you still are somebody's everything, and you have to provide for them, whether that's putting food on the table or clothing them, you are playing with them. You have to provide. You've got to be there emotionally, financially, everything. There is no option, as you say, to fail.
It's actually really interesting that you say that, because it takes me back to sort of maybe like the 6 weeks or 3 months postpartum kind of time when that realization hit. My friends that have had children, I've had a voice note from around that time when they'd say, like, you suddenly feel the weight of like, you're the last buck, aren't you? Like, everyone else can try and settle the baby, but really it comes down to you. And it is quite a weight that there's no plan B at that point. You can't just go, actually, this isn't working out. I don't think this is right for me.
Yeah, and you can't just bugger off on holiday, can you? It's a sort of, you can't hold your hands up and go, I'm out for a week in Turkey or something. You just can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I need a break. Like yesterday, I probably could have done with just rotting on the sofa for a day because I felt rotten, and it's just like, no, can't do that. Mum hat stays firmly on, it's super glued on.
Yeah.
So on the mum side of things, how was it moving when you were pregnant, moving to a whole different country, and as well for your career as well? It wasn't for your husband's career, was it? How was that experience?
Do you know what? I wouldn't recommend it. I would love to sit here and say it was a breeze, but it really wasn't, and I wouldn't be doing it justice to say that. It was really, really stressful. I think at the time that we moved, I was sort of being 7 months pregnant. We moved in the August, and I knew I was giving birth sort of end of October, start of November. We had to find a villa. We had to furnish a villa. We had to find a nanny for my son, nursery for son. I had to find an OB-GYN to deliver the baby. And it was really overwhelming when I thought about it as a whole. When I thought about what I had to do, sort of when we were sitting in Australia, what I had to do to get where we needed to be in the sort of 3 months' time was a lot. And then working full time on top of that was really hard too, because again, I think it comes back to this. When I look back on it now, and hindsight's wonderful, but I look back on it now and I think, why did I not just turn around and say, you guys are moving me. I'm 7 months pregnant. I need just a week or 2 weeks or something to just focus on this rather than also be working. But you don't do. You're sort of desperate to prove yourself. And that's what I would do very differently. If I was doing it again, and as I say, hindsight, it's amazing. But if I was doing it again, I would say, I need some time here to focus on my family, to focus on getting set up, to focus on getting this, new baby out and being in a place where we're ready to do that. Because we did move, we moved. It wasn't an easy move in the sense that my husband has children from a previous marriage who are still in Australia. So there's a lot of emotions there going on, a lot of new things to sort of consider and other people to consider, really. It wasn't just about us and what we needed to do. There was a lot of other people in the picture.
So how quickly between them asking you to move and you moving, it doesn't sound like you had a lot of time to process this all.
No, I mean, we did. We knew we were moving in the sort of March of that year, and we moved in the start of August. So there was time. There was time to pack and get everything organized, get the dog her vaccinations and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, God.
But I think you feel, and anyone I'm sure who is listening who has done an international move with kids, I think you really beat yourself up about. I mean, George was only my son was only 18 months at the time, and I look back on it now and it seems ludicrous that I was worried about this, but I was guilty about moving him from everything he'd ever known to a place that I wasn't sure, he was going to like. I was worried about the weather, especially landing in August. But there's so much to do with kids indoors, but there were all these concerns, and they all play into the sort of wider emotional toll that I think women tend to take on more than men. It's not because men don't care, and that's absolutely not the case. I think that sort of mental burden tends to fall more on the mum.
Yeah. And was there ever the thought of maybe not moving and staying in Australia, or were you quite committed then to coming over to Dubai when they offered you to move?
Yeah, I mean, I think it had been something we'd been speaking about for a while, so it wasn't
Yeah.
a sort of snap decision. Australia will always be home, I think, for us. It's a wonderful place, but with young kids, it can feel quite far away when you're not near your family. And obviously, with COVID, the borders were closed for 18 months. And George, my son, was born in November 2020, so he was very much born in the middle of that COVID borders
Mm.
closed, and it was a really uncertain time. It was a tough time to be a first time mum in Australia without any family
Mm.
around, and it did change my perception of the place a little bit. So it sort of consolidated our decision to move for a little bit.
Yeah. Have the stepkids come to visit? Do they like Dubai?
Yes, yeah, they come in the school holidays. Well, the older two aren't at school anymore. The younger one is, and yeah, she comes in the school holidays. They do like it. They've only ever come in the winter. Whether they would enjoy it so much when it's 50 degrees outside, I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
we tend to go back to Australia in the summer months, which is a nice compromise.
Yeah, that works well, definitely. I would love to get to a point where I can just leave Dubai as soon as it hots up and go back to the UK. That is the dream, isn't it?
It's the dream. Yeah, I think it's so hard with kids our, Bonnie and Mimi's age, because
Yeah.
you want them to be outside, don't you? And so much of their sort of running around, and it's really difficult not to be able to just get in the pram and go for a walk.
Yeah. And I don't know about Mimi, but Bonnie now at this age just keeps going, walkies, walkies, outside, outside. And she'll go get her shoes. She'll get my shoes. She will take my hand to the door. And then I'm like, God, that is way too hot out there. And I just take her for a walk around the building and back.
Don't know about Bonnie, but my two don't seem to feel the heat in the same way that I do. They come back and they're outside a lot of the afternoon, even now still, and they're sweating and they're kind of,
Yeah.
but they don't seem to mind. Maybe it's just being brought up in Dubai.
Yeah, well, at the moment, because of giving up breastfeeding, Bonnie is just constantly dehydrated because she will not drink enough water. So that's one reason why I don't like her going out and getting
Yeah,
all
that's really
sweaty.
tough.
Yeah. Well, let's round up our chat then. Something new that I want to start doing on the podcast is doing a shout out to other small businesses. They can be local businesses or just small businesses in general. So I wonder if you've thought of any small business that you'd like to shout out here in Dubai. You must know a lot just from doing the roundups and the newsletters.
Can I shout out more than one? Is that
Yeah, go
allowed?
for it. Yeah.
Because it would be remiss if I didn't shout out the two partners that we have for Mama Hub, who have been just amazing and took such a chance on us. I sort of went to them and I was like, "This is what I want to do. Will you help me?" And they said yes, absolutely. And that's Kiddos Toy Club, which is a toy subscription rental service, which is just amazing. And I actually used them. The reason I went to them for Mama Hub is because I used them myself before, and their toys are just lovely. They give us a bag from Mama Hub, so the nice toys that we've got at the playgroups are always theirs.
I've actually given kiddos a shout out before, very early on in the podcast, because we have them for Bonnie. They're fab.
Yeah, they are. They're great, and they just are so family orientated, and their values and their mission is very, very clear. They're coming from a very good place.
Yeah.
And Peek-a-Book, the library, give us a box of books every week, which is lovely. It's run by Alessandra, and she's also a mum. And they're a mobile library service with lots of different languages as well, which is what I really like about them. Not that my kids are in any way bilingual, but I think if you are in Dubai, it must be quite challenging to sort of try and find those resources.
Yeah.
So those are our two amazing, amazing partners with that. The other one I did want to say from a sort of personal perspective is Beck and Doodle. If you are looking for newborn baby gifts, amazing. All fully sustainable, compostable, recyclable, beautiful organic cotton baby gifts. And they do, because what I always find difficult about, you want to kind of give mum something. And what they do is these really lovely little gift boxes that you can gift a mum, like a kimono, as well as the baby grows and everything. And also toddler, so for older siblings, you can gift them something too in the little box. So
everyone can be matching.
Yeah. So you can sort of do it matching or not matching. It is run by a lovely Irish lady, mum of 3 boys, called Layla. And it's a sort of very small Dubai run business. So I'd like to give them a shout out.
Rachel, thank you for coming on the podcast. How can people get in touch with you?
You can follow us on Instagram at mamahubdxb. You can DM me or email me at rachel@mamahub.me.
Amazing. Thank you. She's so got it right, hasn't she, in terms of the support that we need as mums. So go and check her out and check out our next Careers Club event. If you're listening to this in summer, we'll probably go quiet over summer, but we will be back in September with more of these events. If you like the podcast, please do send this to a friend who you think would like to listen. And it also really helps me out if you just press follow. I mean, a rating or review would be fabulous, but we are time poor mums. So please just press follow and I will speak to you next time.